Mr. Herbert W. Price from Lidcombe in New South Wales has written to us and said that he comes from a family which lived on the Murray River for 3 generations, and because of that he's very interested in the Murray River area, and in particular in the old steam-driven paddle wheelers which used to ply the Murray in years gone by. Well, in answer to Mr. Price's request to show some of this, we're going to take a look at paddle steamers, or in particular one paddle steamer, the Melbourne. Now, there's been other people writing in and want to see paddle steamers too, so in this segment we're going to meet Albie Poynton, that's the captain and owner of the Melbourne, and see what he has to go through each day to get up steam on the Melbourne so that people can recapture that spirit of the old age of steam which Mr. Price refers to in his letter.
Although the Melbourne spends the nights in front of Albie Poynton's home on the New South Wales bank of the Murray River, the steamer is operated daily from Mildura on the Victorian side of the river. For Albie, the day starts with the cleaning out of the boiler ashes. He then tests the level of the water in the boiler from yesterday's run with the boat. Although the water is quite hot after an all-night stand, it is still referred to as cold and must be slowly brought up to 150 pounds of steam pressure. Glowing coals from yesterday's fire are used to ignite the new fire, but this must be carried out slowly, otherwise the boiler could be permanently damaged. Getting up steam takes around 2 hours with these old engines, and the continual maintenance is probably the reason that there are few original steamers still operating on the Murray. There are plenty of paddle wheelers, but most have had their power plants converted to modern diesel engines. Albie's morning includes loading a rather large quantity of wood on board the Melbourne, for it burns quite a bit on each run, and the Melbourne runs daily with loads of passengers keen to capture the spirit and pace of the last century. There's an art in every occupation, and with steamboats it includes such things as using the bent and twisted logs to feed the firebox, whilst stacking the straight timbers neatly ready for use. Albie carries out these tasks with practised skill in the same way it would have been done in the days of steam. Just another part of the truly authentic methods which Albie likes to demonstrate. Before each day's run, a number of self-oiling reservoirs must be topped up. This mass of exposed moving parts is one of the fascinations of the steam engine. By 2 o'clock each day, Albie moves the Melbourne about 1,000 metres down the river to the wharf in Mildura, ready for the run with a load of passengers. A last whistle blast to call any late arrivals to the wharf, and the Melbourne is ready to take off along the Murray as she has done for 60 years. Lorraine and Carmen join the crowd on board and settle back for 2 hours of gently cruising down the river.
Hello, sir.
An engineer runs the steam engine, while Albie takes the helm and informs his passengers of the various aspects of steamboat travel and points out places of interest.
I think originally there was about 300 paddle steamers built and used on the River Murray. At any one time, there was approximately 193 paddle steamers. The Melbourne was originally built for the Victorian government and used as a work boat. In the early days, of course, there were stacks of wood established along the river every 5 or 10 miles, and the paddle steamers could pull into the bank and purchase a load of firewood Most of the wood piles were owned by different private enterprises, and often the paddle steam would pull into the bank and the owners would be away cutting timber, and they would load on perhaps 10 or 20 tonnes of wood and just leave a note what paddle steamer had taken the load of wood, and possibly pay for that timber on their return journey.
Today, of course, there is no call for such an honor system of wood piles, and Albie Poynton must get all his own timber. This grand waterway was the highway for the inland in the latter part of last century and in the early part of the 1900s. Ports like Echuca further upstream were huge and constantly busy with commerce. The river played a big part in opening up the country, but having served in this way, is now no longer used as a water highway meandering through the mallee. Visitors like to recapture the feeling of yesteryear, and there are few ways to do it more effectively than by paddle steamer. Travelling down the river with a gentle throbbing of the paddles driving the boat, it's easy to forget that the engine is being constantly tended. The fire must be kept up, the steam pressure maintained, the water replenished, and the lubrications of the massive moving parts watched. In this complex array of moving rods and shafts, it never fails to hold the attention of every visitor on the Melbourne. Most early paddle boats were work boats for hauling long strings of barges loaded with wool bales. They were built of shallow draft with side paddles to negotiate the often broad and shallow river system, particularly during flood times when paddle steamer captains would take shortcuts across flooded bends in the river.
Well, to Mr. Price and everybody else that rode in wanting to relive the grand old days of steam on the Murray River, I'd say there's no better way than to take a journey down the Murray on the paddle steamer Melbourne.